The Buddha once stayed at the Mango Grove Monastery of Jivaka. Devadatta tried to kill the Buddha by pushing a rock from Vulture's Peak. The rock struck a ledge and a splinter hit the Buddha's big toe. The Buddha was taken to Jivaka's monastery for treatment. Jivaka, a renowned physician, treated the Buddha's toe and bandaged it. He promised to return in the evening to remove the bandage. However, the city gates closed before he could return. Jivaka was very worried that the Buddha might become very ill. That night, the Buddha asked Thera Ananda to remove the bandage. The wound was completely healed. The next morning, Jivaka asked if the Buddha felt pain and distress. The Buddha replied, "Ever since I attained Buddhahood, there has been no pain and distress for me." He then recited verse 90. "For him whose journey is ended, who is free from sorrow and all fetters, there is no more distress." Many attained Sotapadhi fruition after hearing this. The Buddha once resided at the Veluvana monastery in Rajagaha. He informed the bhikkhus that they would soon be leaving Rajagaha. Some bhikkhus prepared for departure by stitching and dyeing new robes. Others washed their old robes. Thera Mahakassapa was seen washing his robes. Some bhikkhus speculated that he might not leave Rajagaha. They thought he was too attached to his lay devotees. On the eve of departure, the Buddha decided some bhikkhus should remain. He chose Thera Mahakassapa to stay at the Veluvana monastery. The Buddha explained that Mahakassapa stayed under his instruction. He was not attached to anything in Rajagaha. The Buddha then spoke a verse about mindfulness and abandoning cravings. Thera Belatthasisa was a monk residing at the Jetavana monastery. His story is a lesson in mindfulness and intention. After collecting alms in the village, he would eat some food and continue collecting more. He dried the extra rice and stored it. This allowed him to meditate for days without interruption. He would soak the dried rice in water and eat it after his meditation. Other monks misunderstood his actions. They thought he was hoarding food out of greed. They reported him to the Buddha, concerned about his behavior. The Buddha clarified that Thera Belatthasisa was innocent. He stored food to save time for meditation, not out of greed. The Buddha then prohibited food hoarding for monks. The Buddha recited verse 92. Arahats do not hoard. They reflect well over their food. Their goal is nibbana, which is void and signless. Their path is like birds in the air, untraceable. Thera Anuruddha was a devoted monk residing at the Jetavana monastery. One day he needed a new robe. His old robe was soiled and torn. He searched a rubbish heap for discarded cloth. Jalini, his wife from a past life, saw his struggle from the Deva world. She placed 3 pieces of good Deva cloth in the rubbish heap. Anuruddha found the cloth and took it to the monastery. The Buddha and his disciples helped him stitch the robe. Villagers sent abundant food, prompted by Jalini. The Buddha explained that arahats do not seek material things. Their path is like birds in the air, untraceable. The Buddha resided at the Pabarama monastery. On a full moon day, Saka and a large company of devas came to pay homage to the Buddha. The Buddha was attended by his chief disciples and senior bhikkhus. A seat was kept vacant for Thera Mahakaccayana, who had not yet arrived from Avanti. Saka paid homage to the Buddha with flowers, incense, and perfumes. He noticed the vacant seat and expressed his wish for Thera Mahakaccayana to arrive so he could also pay obeisance to him. At that moment, Thera Mahakaccayana arrived. Saka was pleased and eagerly paid obeisance to him with flowers, incense, and perfumes. Some bhikkhus thought Saka was being partial. The Buddha explained, "One who is restrained in his senses is loved by both men and devas." The Buddha once shared a profound lesson at the Jetavana monastery. Thera Sariputta was preparing for a journey with his followers. A young bhikkhu, holding a grudge, falsely accused Sariputta of abuse. The Buddha questioned Sariputta. Sariputta calmly explained his nature. He compared himself to the earth, a doormat, and a bull with broken horns. He felt no pleasure or resentment, only detachment. The young bhikkhu, realizing his mistake, wept and admitted his lie. The Buddha advised Sariputta to accept the apology to prevent severe consequences for the young bhikkhu. Sariputta forgave the young bhikkhu and asked for forgiveness in return. The Buddha praised Sariputta's patience and purity. He compared him to the earth and a serene, mud-free lake. Once, at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha shared a profound story. It was about a young Samanera from Kosambi. A 7-year-old boy became a Samanera at his father's request. Before his head was shaved, he was given a meditation subject. He focused deeply and attained arahatship by the time his head was shaved. Theratisa and the young Samanera journeyed to Savatthi to see the Buddha. they spent a night in a village monastery. The Thera accidentally injured the Samanera's eye while waking him. Despite the injury, the Samanera continued his duties without complaint. The Thera apologized, but the Samanera said it was due to karma. At Jetavana, the Thera told the Buddha about the noble Samanera. The Buddha explained that an Arahat is calm in mind, speech, and deed. He is free from defilements and remains serene through life's ups and downs. The story of Thera Sariputta is a profound lesson from the Buddha. 30 bhikkhus arrived at the Jetavana monastery to pay homage to the Buddha. The Buddha asked Sariputta if meditating on the senses could lead to nibbana. Sariputta's answer was misunderstood by the bhikkhus. They thought he lacked faith. The Buddha clarified that Sariputta's acceptance was based on personal realization, not mere faith. The Buddha then spoke. He who has realized nibbana and discarded all craving is the noblest of men. The story of Thera Revata is a tale of spiritual awakening and enlightenment. Revata was the youngest brother of Sariputta, the chief disciple of the Buddha. At just 7 years old, his parents arranged a marriage for him. At the wedding, he met a very old lady and realized the inevitability of aging and decay. This realization led him to run away from home. Revata went to a monastery where 30 bhikkhus made him a Samanera, as requested by his brother Sariputta. Revata took a subject of meditation and went to an acacia forest. By the end of the Vasa, he attained arahatship. The Buddha, accompanied by Sariputta and other bhikkhus, visited Revata. The devas provided for their needs along the journey. Revata created a special monastery for their stay. After their visit, the Buddha praised the place where arahats dwell as delightful. This is the story of a woman of doubtful character and a meditating bhikkhu. A bhikkhu took a subject of meditation from the Buddha. He practiced diligently in an old garden. His mind was focused and serene. A woman of doubtful character entered the garden. She saw the bhikkhu and tried to seduce him. The bhikkhu became frightened but also felt a strange delight. The Buddha from his monastery saw the bhikkhu's plight. Using his supernormal power, he sent rays of light to the bhikkhu. The message was clear. My son, this is not the place for bhikkhus. The Buddha spoke in verse. Forests are delightful, but worldlings find no delight in them. Only those free from passion will find delight in them.